What's going on, guys? This is Kalen Hurley, your host of the Vegas Golden Knight podcast, All the Glitters. Let's start the show. So we head back to Edmonton, 2-2, tied in the series. Florida goes up early, 3-0. Edmonton matches in the second, essentially 3-0. So now we're 3-3, locked up, tied in the third. Wallman scores late. Not super late, but late enough to get Florida sweating. I had actually texted a buddy. I said, Edmonton's going to give this back. We're going to overtime. Sam Reinhart thankfully made me correct. 19 seconds left of regulation. Get there, overtime. Leon Draisaitl scores, ends at 5-4. Here we go. Got to lose 2 to go in 6. So, again, mathematically, I'm still on. So, Cats in 6. I think the next 2 games, they win decisively. I think Edmonton gave Florida everything they had left. I think obviously you have to have some level of urgency when you're down 3-0 in a first period, when you could go down 3-1 into a series. So Knobloch pulled, Skinner, Kyle Pickard came out for the second and third, and there it is. You get this last push. Skinner played a great game, actually, despite it being 3-0. It wasn't on Skinner. Defensive collapses. Listening to 32 Thoughts this morning, apparently Corey Perry was a big mouthpiece in the locker room in the between intermissions and said basically to Connor, hey, let's dig the F in, boys. Let's go. This isn't acceptable. Probably a little bit less voice breaky and scratchy as Connor did in that Amazon doc. Unfortunately for him, that lives on forever where his voice is cracking. But, it is what it is. He's trying to speak with emotion, and sometimes it goes, right? So Perry goes and gets the guys together, and they snapped out of it. Now, I do think that was their push. I don't know if, whereas I thought they'd have their push in Edmonton, I think that you're going to see Florida come out and play a great road game. I think they finished this off in regulation in Game 5 on Saturday, which is great. We finally get a Stanley Cup Final Game Saturday. Can't wait. And then I think the series is over again in 6 in Florida. I think Florida's inevitable. I don't know. I think that was probably their worst game as far as collapsing in the second, but still in the third. And in most of the beginning of overtime, it went one way, but came back. Sam Bennett almost ended it off the post, off of the glove first. Pickard made a great save, but I just think Florida's inevitable. I think that they're going to get it done. That's probably the anti-Edmonton fan in me speaking, to be honest. It's so hard to watch that team have any sort of success. And I know I'm going to sound like, oh, you're a Vegas fan, you're biased. Like that fan base, Edmonton's fan base, is the most delusional, most arrogant, hardest people to interact with online. They are some of the biggest trash humans I think I've ever had the displeasure of being involved with in my entire life. The amount of Las Vegas mass shooting references that they pull, the amount of, we're Canadian, you guys are new, these lazy arguments they do, the amount of trolling they try to do to get under your skin, it's crazy. It's literally like their entire fan base is a bunch of 12-year-old bullies. And that's fine. Like we live in an age where everyone gets a voice. And look, I'm talking to you guys, and well, maybe all 12 of you. Unfortunately, right now we're still starting out, but I get that there's a level of back and forth. I get that there's a level of smack talk that goes with sports, especially being a fan, very tribal. But when it crosses a line, it's crazy to think, and I know it happens in other teams, and I hope that it doesn't happen as much or to the extent that it does in Edmonton as it has or may have the potential to in Vegas. Skinner's wife is going on social media and saying that her and her kids and the entire family are receiving death threats because of Stuart Skinner's performance on the ice. Every watch party, if you go on X or Twitter or any social media, any Edmonton watch party, and usually wins, losses at the arena itself, massive fights, all this stuff. And then their only thing is like, this is what real hockey fans are. It's like, you guys have had the Alberta cold rot your brain so much that you guys are just, it's so, you're reverted back to like caveman. That's it. It's just like the level of intelligence is low and the level of trolling and arrogance is high. And it's just, it's insane. It's insane to watch. It's insane to interact with. And it makes you root hard against it. I never thought I'd be a Florida fan. I never thought I'd be like hoping that they win. And I just, again, if McDavid wins a cup, I hope it's not in Edmonton. I hope nothing good ever comes to Edmonton sports. I really don't. It's just, I want them to be miserable because they try to make the others miserable around them. And that's that. Like, maybe that's like this weird, like, I think that's justice seeking to me or something like that. But it's so crazy that you could be that, we'll just call it passionate. They could be so passionate that they think that like doling out death threats or making fun of mass shootings or calling people like the most insane names and things like that because that they're just real fans. It's nuts. And, it's probably why I get so, I'm actually glad I wasn't able to. This is the day after, so I'm a little bit more removed from the initial result of last night. I was pretty fired up just because you go online afterwards and just, it is what it is. But series is tied 2-2, and that's what happens when you have two of the best players in the world. Also, I am going to go out on a limb and just say, listen, you guys have a team that's in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row. You're not there without McDavid and Draisaitl. You are a middling to lower third team in the league. Those two crazy aliens who play hockey, who happen to play for the Edmonton Oilers, those two are the reason. Your coach is mediocre. Their cast around Draisaitl and McDavid are mediocre. Your goalies are wildly mediocre. You have ridden the coattails of two aliens out of mediocrity into some sort of success, and you're bragging like crazy about it. And I hope it bites you, and I hope McDavid bounces after this contract, and because you paid Draisaitl what you paid him, and you can't afford it. And if you can't afford it, I hope they rot in Edmonton. I hope they rot in Edmonton so hard and never get hardware. I hope it's just individual accolades until they retire and go bounce to some place that gets them in the dying years of their career. And I hope they win after that too. Boom. I don't ever get that petty. And I was telling someone this morning, I just think because of how often and how loud they are and for how long they've been this way, it makes it enjoyable to watch them fail. And I hope they fail. And I hope it hurts. I hope it's an overtime game 7 where they get a goal called back. They all have to go on the ice, and then it goes the other way and they get knifed in the back and they have to watch Florida with all the rats on the ice. I hope it's the most painful loss I've ever witnessed. Boom. That's how I feel about Edmonton. Let's tie a bow on that. Let's get into the rest of things. Jack Eichel. There's some Vegas news, which is cool. Jack Eichel took 5th in Hart voting, which is the most, I think, what was it? I think that they had said that Mark Stone had taken 9th one year, but this is the highest any Vegas player has ever been on the list. He got 1 or 2 first place votes, which is cool. I think that's a amazing individual accolade. I do think that plays into his next contract. You start getting that top 5 or that podium style 1, 2, 3 in having the most valuable player on your team. The contract and the AAV should be starting to reflect that. So as far as Vegas cap goes, that's a bad news situation, but I think it's so cool. I think you're really watching Jack Eichel come into his own. He's finally shed all of the chip as far as what Buffalo had done to him off of his shoulder. He's won his cup. And now it's time for, I think, for us to watch him have his best season in year 9, which is cool. And it's also his number. So we are entering the Eichel year of Vegas. And I think that, I think he not only eclipses 100 points, but I think he might have his highest goal scoring. And I think that he will be in the runnings in like a real, actual name for Hart voting next year. That's just my way too early prediction. And it's my homer prediction too, right? Like I would hope that he's in that conversation because that means he's doing great. And hopefully if he's doing great, Vegas is doing great. When we'll find out pretty soon who's going to be at least most of the way on his lines or what a Vegas team is looking like. Nothing too much more as far as like the free agency or trade talks. They've kind of slowed down a little bit. There's some other stuff that's around the league. I mean, Chris Kreider just got traded, and we'll get into that in a bit too. But so we'll find out who's going to be on Eichel's wings. But right now, I think his stock is just shooting up as much as it can, and it's cool. You root for people like Jack Eichel who have, from the start of his career, Buffalo was upset they got the second. They didn't get the first round, and like he had to be second fiddle to Connor McDavid. And then everything that happened in Buffalo, and then he comes to Vegas and they missed the playoffs that first year. And it's like, did he do the right thing? And then he comes back, they win a cup. He has finally shed this. He's made a name for himself outside of the shadow of McDavid and outside of that doom and gloom situation he was in Buffalo. And it's good to see good people do well. There's rumors out there that one day, I think Jack's signing for 7 or 8 years. Others think he's going to sign for 3 to 5 years, like a bridge deal for, something a little bit higher or potentially like, higher than what he's getting paid now, but nothing like top paid in the league, where then he's going to try to go back home to Boston or maybe an original 6, like a New York or someplace like that. I don't think that that's the case. I think he signs a big deal here. And I kind of made it alluded to it a little bit last podcast. I don't know if you have hardware, maybe, but like this whole allure now, all sports are much more athlete driven these days. And, you lose a little bit of this like history, like homage. I don't know if being a part of an original 6 franchise means as much anymore as it used to, if that makes sense. Going to be a part of a New York or a Boston, obviously Boston's where he's from, so that would be a little bit different and special in that way. But I don't think a player like Eichel or a player like, or any of these top players in the league care to go and I'm going to play for this storied franchise or this, that. Like, I think they want to, they're all like, all these guys are hockey nerds. So they just want to win and win and win. And we don't know where Vegas is going to be in 7, 8 years. I have an indication that they're probably not going to be as dominant as they've been recently, or in their early history. Obviously, Boston looks like they're on a small decline. They're probably going to be doing a little bit more of a retool or a reset. Same with New York. Obviously, you get a coach like Sullivan, and you're making these big moves like with Kreider just now, and we're going to get to that. But I don't know if playing for an original 6 is as sexy as it was 10 years ago. And if you're a fan of an original 6 team, you disagree, hopefully, wholeheartedly, and that's fine. I just don't know if players today care as much. I know they care about, taking care of themselves long term and making sure that they get paid so they don't, have to get a job later in real estate and say, I was once a Stanley Cup champion, buy a house from me, because now I make no money. And we all know that hockey is at the bottom of the barrel as far as giving athletes money. So I'm hoping that maybe people start to realize that I think these players want to make their own history rather than be a part of somebody else's history, if that makes sense. You know, that's kind of why, there's old stories of Gretzky who says it himself. Like, he had an offer to, I think it might have been Detroit who had offered him, and he's, his dad said, "Hey, you want to go make your own history, go to LA or go," and I could be getting that story wrong. So again, guys, don't like come at my throat, but there is a story out there that's, when he ended up taking the trade to LA, he had a trade basically on the table for somewhere else, or maybe that's when he was getting drafted. And he ended up choosing Edmonton rather than the other. So again, don't kill me on that, but I think these days athletes care about their own brand, getting paid, making their own history. And I think that, that's what we could see when you are making choices. You're going to see a lot more people making these choices of going to tax-free states to maximize their contracts, to go into places that make sense in, or maybe going and play with a buddy, or maybe going and playing with someplace that like really tickles their hockey heart and makes it fun for them again. And that brings me to Chris Kreider getting traded yesterday to the Anaheim Ducks, and big move from New York standards, but big move in Anaheim standards as well. You get a veteran scoring winger who has had a good amount of success. He's had success at the World Junior stage for Team USA. He's had success. He's been to Eastern Conference Finals. He's had 50. I think he scored 50, if not very close. He plays on the PK. He plays on the power play. He had a down year last year, but all of New York had a down year last year. Something was rotten in that locker room, and it started with getting Jacob Trouba out. And I don't think that that's not a coincidence that he went to Anaheim. I think he kind of played a little part. He's like, hey, he's good buddies with Trevor Zegras. He knows Trouba, obviously, is former captain. I think he goes down there, and I think this is my way too early prediction. I think he scores 40 goals or more next year. And I think he reminds people why he is Chris Kreider. And he's what I think about when I think, oh, that guy's got that dog mentality. I think Chris Kreider is a dog. I think he prides himself on playing the game the right way. And you could call it bad puck luck. You could call it bad or not being appreciated. He was on the trading block, and the management made it very known. So, you never know what that does to a player's psyche as he's trying to go play through an entire season. Never know, is he going to get traded the next day, and how that hangs and how that affects your performance. So, now that the monkey's off his back, he can play a little bit more free. He's going to have I think a lot more juice and energy to his game next year. Anaheim is they are an amoeba of a team to me. I think that they could just make the playoffs outright and be that like third seed, or they could sneak into the wild card, or they could stink again. It's a real weird team that they have. They usually start like oddly hot, and then they kind of fizzle out, and then they just fall off a cliff. But I don't know, something about the way this roster is constructed, and Dostal, I think, is their clear number one goaltender. I would like to see them try to do something with Gibson. He deserves to be on a team that he is a true number one again. I still think he has that in him. And I also think that he deserves to be on a team that is a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, because I don't think that Anaheim's supposed to be good. I just think they might be. I think that they're going to be like that weird, like, they might be the Florida Panthers of 2023, where they're just getting there and then they go on a run in the postseason. They might not make a cup, but they might just win a series. They might do that, but I think they get a little taste of success. And, but I think that Anaheim does owe John Gibson to try to get him somewhere where he could find success. Maybe it's a 1A, 1B situation. He makes too much money, but like, John Gibson would be like a great 1A, 1B with Adin Hill. I mean, that sounds obvious, right? He's a great goaltender, but like, where he's not the sole starter and where Hill's not the sole starter, maybe you split those games, how we were supposed to split them with Sammy, things like that. Or, he would be in, like, maybe if Nashville's looking to beef up with, maybe not give Saros all those starts. They had that weird goalie thing happen last year. There's teams out there that need goaltending, and I think John Gibson still has great games ahead of him. I don't think that he's washed by any means, but that AAV is going to be a little hard to handle at 6.5. I think he makes, and I don't know. I think this might be his last year of his contract, and if it isn't, and he's a free agent, which I don't think is the case, that would be money, because I think you could throw a couple million at him. He gets out of that situation, and he would be a very good candidate for having a great season next year. But we'll see what happens with Anaheim. I'm super happy and super pumped to see Kreider go. I think he was someone that I thought Vegas should go after a couple years back. Obviously, he wasn't on the trade block or anything like that, but it's, New York's making some noise and they're looking to do something. We just don't know. They do have a lot of cap space. Lafreniere's name was tossed around, making 7-7. That's a guy who I don't think has reached his full potential. I don't know if it's situationally where he can, maybe New York won't let him get over the hump. Maybe it's mentally. But I think at 7x7 with the salary cap going up, I think that contract is super favorable for what Laffy brings on his upside. So, kind of like a Matt Boldy situation, which he's not leaving Minnesota. So I think if they do end up getting rid of him, almost like the trade rumors going around with Jason Robinson, I think that could be your diamond in the rough winger who is going to make less money than Nikolai Ehlers, who's going to make less money than Brock Besser's about to get. But I think that those two, Robinson and Lafreniere, have more upside than both of those players, in my opinion. And obviously, Marner's going to get a bajillion dollars thrown at him. But again, yes, he's the top as far as like potential, and obviously he's done it, is with his points and his play in the regular season. It's to be seen in the postseason, but I do believe that that's situational, and I do think that Toronto's a bad mix for him. It's like oil and water. So I am very, very eager to see what Marner does wherever he goes. I think he's going to do well. But Lafreniere and Jason Robertson, those are two that I'm very intrigued about, although both of those names have cooled off quite a bit. And I think that teams were interested. I think New York and Dallas both didn't like what they were hearing. And I think that they're like, okay, let's figure out a situation to keep these guys. Obviously, people want them, so there's a reason. And let's maybe try to formulate something a little bit better and put some other pieces up on the trade block, or maybe let a couple more people in free agency walk rather than these guys. And we'll figure out a team around them rather than, bringing in all this new blood and going. It's like, the devil the devil you don't. And right now, I think both those two players with Robo and Laffy, I think that those two guys are awesome. I think that they're good in their cities and teams, and I think that getting rid of them does more harm than keeping them, if that makes sense. So I don't expect them to go anywhere. I don't really expect them to be really involved unless somebody gives them something unbelievable and they can't turn it down. I just don't see them moving. So, as far as that goes, there's no more real things other than rumors out there. And honestly, none of them are good enough to really speak on. So that's going to be it for me today. I appreciate your guys' ears. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If you liked anything I said today, go ahead and click like. If you liked it a lot, please subscribe to the channel. That does so much for all the analytics on things, and it helps me know that at least somebody's liking my message. The clips that I'm posting on TikTok are getting some decent traction, so that's super cool. You can follow me over there. It's the same thing, All the Glitters podcast on TikTok. And if you liked any of it and you think someone else would, please share the video. That does a lot of good for me as well. And I'm hoping to have this out later today. And if not, you'll see it Saturday before the game. And then Saturday night, for sure, I'll be recording again. And then we'll go from there. But yeah, thank you very much. Happy Fridays. Besos, mi amigos. See ya.